became a fighting machine.
Movies where chicks are kicking ass are really in nowadays.
This film is about justice and redemption.
It's phenomenal. It's classic Quentin.
I came up with the idea of doing a revenge movie with Uma, and it'd be a cool exploitation kind of thing, and she'd play an assassin, but not just an assassin, one of the deadliest women in the world. And she's been screwed over by the deadly vipers.
What seemed like the beginning of the movie to me is we were out with people from Pulp Fiction one night 10 years ago.
And I go, Uma, I've got the next movie for us. All right, so I just tell her, and it's called Kill Bill.
And he was telling me about genre cinema with all the great power and enthusiasm and detail that this cinephile mind can produce, which is pretty extraordinary. And I started telling him about this character I wanted to play and this name I wanted to call the character. And
for the next couple of weeks, we just proceeded to keep talking about Kill Bill in between takes and everything, sitting around talking about it, musing about it.
We kept going back and forth and spun this idea together of this assassin who tries to leave the business and get married. And
one of the things she was like, Quentin, what if the first time we see the bride, okay, she's beaten up, blood all over her face, but when we see her, she's wearing a bridal gown. All right, and that was when the bride was born.
Then he went his way and did Jackie Brown and started writing his war epic, and I did whatever I did for 7 years. And about 3.5 years ago, I ran into him, and I've been out of touch with him. And
it was just so cool to see her. So it made me go into my drawer that I had those handwritten pages of Kill Bill again. So I yanked them out and read them and go, this is some funny shit. All right, this would be really good. So I put the war film aside, and then we would start the process of making the movie, and she got pregnant. I kind of just almost had to just consider recasting her for a week just so everyone else would think I wasn't crazy. I could never make the movie with anybody else. So here we are.
Quentin couldn't have written me a more challenging, sort of difficult part, because I mean, she's sort of an enigma. Just because I have no wish to murder you before the eyes of your daughter does not mean that parading her around in front of me is going to inspire sympathy. She's hard-bitten, she's heartbroken. She's sort of somewhat a lean, mean killing machine.
Uma's superwoman, you know, on top of all the, you know, basic movements. She had to master Japanese swords and, you know, a little bit of wire and Japanese language, and she worked night and day.
Quentin told me the main reason why he wanted to meet with me was because he was in the video store and he saw Two Can Play That Game sitting on the shelf. And he said that it stopped him, and he said, wow, I haven't seen Vivica since really Independence Day. And he went, there's my Vernita.
Vivica is a spitfire. That girl will give it to you. She is awesome. We loved her. She's just full of personality. And she's like, okay, here I am. I'm ready to go, boys. Let's do it.
I wanted something physical, and so the only thing I can say is be careful of what you ask for, because here comes Quentin.
The character wasn't going to be an American. She was going to be Japanese, full-on Japanese from Japan. But then a friend of mine named Moonsun was the biggest fan of Shanghai Noon. So down the line, because of Moonsun, I watched the movie. And I see Lucy Liu in it, and I think she is absolutely amazing in it.
I got a phone call from Quentin out of the blue, and he was just talking a mile a minute about everything, and he was really excited, and he was talking about the script that he had written, and he mentioned that there was a role that he was considering me for, and when I did get the script, I read it from beginning to end, and I was just so thrilled about it.
I decided Oren's not just going to be Japanese. She's going to be half Japanese, half Chinese, Asian American, and she's still going to rule the crime world in Tokyo. She will still be the queen of crime in Tokyo.
As your leader, I encourage you from time to time, and always in a respectful manner, to question my logic. If you're unconvinced a particular plan of action I've decided is the wisest, tell me so. But allow me to convince you, and I promise you right here and now, no subject will ever be taboo. Except, of course, the subject that was just under discussion. My Chinese or American heritage.
Sonny Chiba was, to me, right up there in the 70s with Charles Bronson and Clint Eastwood as just one of the greatest action stars ever. And I've been wanting to work with Sonny since I was a little kid. And Sonny Chiba, one of his coolest things that he did amongst all these great movies is he had a TV show, all right, that I used to watch on the Japanese station in Los Angeles in the 80s. And the English title for the show was Shadow Warriors. All right, the Japanese title of the show was Kage no Gunda. And the way they do series in Japan are very different. They do a series for about like a year or a year and a half. And then when it's over with, it's over. Right? But if it's a success, it takes a year off, and then they do another bunch of episodes, and a year later, Kage no Gunda 2 appears, all right? And I think they went all the way up to 4 with Kage no Gunda, And each time they did a new show, he was a different Hattori Hanzo. It'd be like, Hattori Hanzo the first, and then he'd be Hattori Hanzo the second. It would always take place at, 3 decades later. And so I just continued that philosophy when I wrote my Hattori Hanzo. So he's Hattori Hanzo the 100th in Kill Bill.
Hattori Hanzo ni ittai nan no you desu ka?
Nihon to ga hitsuyou de.
Ittai nihon to o nan ni tsukaun desu ka?
Kiritai nezumi ga iru kara.
You must have big rats. You need Hattori Hanzo's stew.
Huge.
Sonny Chiba is just a radiant star, an incredible person, lovely man. But he was first my teacher. And the look on his face when I was first given the sword and, trying to hold it, and there I was, in the training center, and he just looked absolutely frightened at my abilities. But, I then practiced and worked with his team, and then we finally got to act together.
Then give me one of these.
These are not for sale.
I didn't say sell me. I said give me.
Why should I help you?
Because my vermin is a former student of yours.
Acting in a Quentin Tarantino film was just the bomb. The sweatier, grittier, and bloodier I was, the more he liked me.
I've always considered action directors the greatest movie directors in the world. If you can do action well, then you're the greatest. So the whole idea on Kill Bill was to test the limits of my talent. Okay, action! Great job.
In a way, I think that for Quentin, the action was very challenging, and I think he would say that he taught himself how to shoot action in this movie. He went step by step by step methodically through the process and shot it Hong Kong style of going in continuity and educated himself,
gave birth to himself as an action director.
And I love his energy, and he really cares so much about this project, and you have to respect that, you know. And he's also open to hearing what you have to say about it. He will also fight for what he thinks it is because he's the creator of it.
He brought in all these elements of the samurai and the Hong Kong cinema and all these inspirations that had been such a part of him as a filmmaker.
I think Kill Bill has the same relationship with 70s grindhouse cinema that Raiders of the Lost Ark had with 1940s and in the late 30s movie serials. And just the way that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas had a love for this cinema growing up, and how they took the parts of it that they liked the best, their favorite parts of it, and they kind of reinvented it and, you know, and made it work not only for a new audience, but just for an audience that wasn't as familiar with it as they are, and did it the way they've always wanted to do it, but keeping all the aspects they liked. All right, that's what I tried to do. And, you know, just a quick rundown of all the different things involved in this movie is, like, one, you know, you got Yakuza films and the samurai movies. The spaghetti western.
This ain't no squirrely amateur. This is a worker with solid dog.
But also thrown in there are, you know, there's my little Italian giallo scene. I have my little Brian De Palma sequence in there to give that some fun.
Some of the movie takes place in China, some of it takes place in Japan. So we went to Japan, we went to Hong Kong, we went to the Shaw Brothers Studios, the back lot there to see if we were going to shoot in the back lot. We went to mainland China.
Well, there were multiple translators running around the set at all times. There was the Japanese to English translators, the Chinese to English translators. The Japanese to Chinese translators were equally as essential.
All right, now we're ready to get one for camera. And if you've seen how difficult it is, but we're gonna get it.
And, you know, it was sort of like that. You know, it was kind of madhouse.
Unconsciously, I think what happens with Quentin, he just soaks that stuff up like a sponge. Just living, sitting, breathing that culture. Little things seep in, you know, and they just end up in the movie. So just being there in China was an amazing thing. And he didn't want an all-American crew to go over to China and say, this is how we're going to do it, and to go to Japan. He really wanted the input of the nationals from those countries and to see what they brought.
It was sad to leave. It was very sad to leave. So much so that, to me, pretty much for the rest of the movie, when we went back to America to shoot, I felt like we were on location. Because it felt like when we were shooting in the Beijing film studios, we were home. Action! Very good.
There's something about Quentin's sensibility that he creates his own world, he creates his own style. It's gonna be non-stop, kick you in the ass filmmaking.
You never know what you're going to expect.
It's vintage Tarantino.